What if the most strategically vital piece of land in the entire Middle East, a small island barely visible on most maps, held the power to collapse the global oil market overnight? What if thousands of the most elite fighting forces on the planet were already locked, loaded, and positioned just miles from its shores, waiting for a single order that could ignite the most consequential military confrontation of the 21st century? And what if the decision to abandon diplomacy, abandon the blockade, and go straight for the jugular had already been made behind closed doors in Washington, and the world simply didn't know it yet? Stay with us, because what you are about to hear in the next few minutes will change how you see the entire Middle East conflict forever. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we are standing on the razor's edge of something that military analysts, Pentagon insiders, and defense strategists have quietly been dreading for years. The word from multiple intelligence circles is no longer a whisper. It is a roar. Thousands of United States Marines are reportedly positioning themselves for a potential strike on Kharg Island, Iran's most critical oil export terminal located in the northern Persian Gulf. And the decision, the seismic, earth-shaking decision to abandon a naval blockade strategy in favor of direct military action has sent shockwaves through every defense ministry from London to Beijing. This is not a drill. This is not a war game. This is the real thing unfolding in real time, and you need to understand exactly what is happening, why it is happening, and what comes next. Let's begin with the geography, because if you don't understand Kharg Island, you cannot understand the magnitude of what is being planned. Kharg Island sits roughly 25 kilometers off the southwestern coast of Iran in the Persian Gulf. It is small, only about 14 kilometers long, but do not let its size fool you for even a single second. This island is responsible for processing and exporting approximately 90% of Iran's crude oil. Think about that number, 90%. That means every oil tanker, every barrel of petroleum that Iran sells to fund its military, its proxies, its entire revolutionary infrastructure, nearly all of it flows through Kharg Island. It is Iran's economic heartbeat, its financial lifeline, and its single greatest strategic vulnerability, all wrapped into one small patch of land surrounded by water. And right now, thousands of United States Marines are staring directly at it. The question you should be asking yourself right now is this: why abandon the blockade? Why shift from a strategy of economic strangulation, which has worked in various forms throughout modern military history, to something far more aggressive, far more dangerous, and far more irreversible? The answer, when you dig through the layers of military briefings and geopolitical intelligence, is both chilling and fascinating. A naval blockade of the Persian Gulf, while theoretically effective, presents an almost impossible operational challenge in today's threat environment. Iran has spent the last 2 decades building one of the most sophisticated anti-access and area denial systems in the world, what military planners call A-2000AD. They have thousands of naval mines ready to be deployed within hours. They have fast attack missile boats operating in swarm formations that can overwhelm even the most advanced naval defenses. They have shore-based anti-ship missiles with ranges capable of threatening every vessel in the Gulf. And perhaps most alarmingly, they have submarines, quiet, small, lethal, that have been conducting exercises in exactly the kind of shallow, narrow waterways where a blockade fleet would need to operate. A blockade, the Pentagon concluded, would be a killing field for American sailors. And so they made a different choice entirely. Now, here is where the story takes a turn that most mainstream coverage is completely missing. The shift away from blockade is not merely tactical. It is strategic. It is doctrinal. It represents a fundamental rethinking of how American military power projects itself in the 21st century against a peer, capable regional adversary like Iran. What the Marines being positioned for a Kharg Island strike represents is a return to something older, more direct, and in many ways more terrifying: the idea of seizing or neutralizing a target so critical to an enemy's survival that its loss alone could force a strategic collapse. Military historians will recognize this as the logic of decapitation, not of a leader, but of an economy. Cut off Kharg Island, and you do not just inconvenience Iran, you sever the artery that keeps the entire Iranian state alive. And you do it not with ships sitting offshore enforcing a blockade, but with boots on the ground, fire from the sky, and the most powerful amphibious assault force the world has ever seen. Let's talk about those Marines, because this is where the story gets viscerally real. 3,000 United States Marines does not sound like an enormous number in the abstract, but context changes everything. 3,000 Marines in an amphibious assault configuration supported by naval air power, precision strike assets, electronic warfare platforms, and special operations forces acting as advanced scouts. That is not a symbolic show of force. That is a fully operational strike package capable of seizing and holding a strategic objective against determined resistance. These are not garrison troops. These are not peacekeepers. The Marines being discussed in relation to a potential Kharg Island operation are assault specialists trained in amphibious warfare, trained to operate in chaotic, contested environments, trained to move fast, hit hard, and establish control before the enemy has time to respond coherently. The last time the world saw a Marine amphibious operation of this scale and ambition, history changed overnight. But here is what keeps military planners awake at 3 in the morning. Iran knows this. Tehran has had years, decades, to study American amphibious doctrine, to map out the approaches to Kharg Island, to pre-position defensive systems, to build fortifications, to rehearse their response. Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps units assigned to defend Kharg Island are not conscripts clutching outdated rifles. They are trained, motivated, ideologically committed fighters who have been told since the day they enlisted that this island is worth dying for. The coastal defense systems ringing Kharg Island include radar, guided artillery, mobile missile batteries, and tunneled defensive networks that American planners have been trying to fully map for years. An assault on Kharg Island would not be a walk on the beach. It would be one of the most violent, contested, and consequential military operations since the Second Gulf War, and it appears to be on the table right now. Stay with us, because in just a moment we are going to reveal the weapons systems that would make this operation possible, technology so advanced that Iran may have no effective counter to it. But first, you need to understand the diplomatic dimension of what has already collapsed, because the road to this military confrontation did not appear overnight. The decision to move Marines into striking position of Kharg Island comes after what multiple sources describe as a complete and total breakdown of any meaningful diplomatic channel between Washington and Tehran. Back-channel negotiations, indirect talks mediated by Omani and Qatari diplomats, quiet communications through European intermediaries, all of it, according to people familiar with the situation, has produced nothing. Iran's leadership has interpreted every diplomatic overture as a sign of American hesitation, a signal that Washington lacks the political will to actually pull the trigger on consequential military action. That calculation, if accurate, may have just proven catastrophically wrong, because the movement of 3,000 Marines toward the Persian Gulf region is not a negotiating tactic. It is not a bluff designed to bring Tehran back to the table. Military sources describe the current posture as genuine operational preparation, the kind that happens when decision makers have already mentally crossed a threshold and are now working through the logistics of execution rather than still debating whether to act. And here is a fact that should make every person watching this video pause for a moment of genuine reflection. Kharg Island is not just strategically important to Iran. It is globally important. Iran exports roughly 2 million barrels of crude oil per day, and the overwhelming majority of that flows through Kharg Island. The removal of that supply from global markets, whether through a successful marine assault, sustained airstrikes, or even the mere credible threat of military action, would send oil prices to levels not seen since the worst energy crisis of the modern era. We are talking potential spikes that would drive gasoline prices through the roof from California to Scotland. That would increase shipping costs on every product crossing every ocean. That would trigger inflation responses from central banks from Washington to Frankfurt to Tokyo. The economic blast radius of a successful strike on Kharg Island extends far beyond the Persian Gulf. It touches every economy on Earth. It touches your economy. It touches your life. The stakes here are not abstract geopolitical chess. They are immediate, they are personal, and they are enormous. Now let's talk about the technology, because this is where modern American military power reveals itself in ways that would have seemed like science fiction just 15 years ago. Any assault on Kharg Island would be preceded by an electronic warfare campaign designed to blind Iranian radar and communication systems across the entire Gulf region. The EA-18G Growler, the Navy's premier electronic attack aircraft, would be operating at range, flooding Iranian air defense frequencies with jamming signals so powerful that radar operators on the ground would be staring at screens full of white noise, unable to distinguish incoming threats from static. Simultaneously, cyber operations units whose existence and capabilities are only partially acknowledged by the Pentagon would be targeting Iranian command and control networks, seeking to sever the communication links between Iranian defensive units on Kharg Island and their commanders on the mainland. Following the electronic suppression campaign, the next wave would involve precision strikes from B-2 Spirit stealth bombers operating from Diego Garcia, combined with Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from submarines and surface ships positioned throughout the Gulf. The target set would be specific and ruthlessly prioritized: radar installations, missile batteries, command facilities, fuel and ammunition storage, communications infrastructure. The goal is not to destroy Kharg Island's oil infrastructure. That would defeat the entire strategic purpose, but to create a corridor of suppressed defenses through which the Marine Assault Force can operate. Within that corridor of destruction and electronic chaos, the amphibious assault ships would begin their approach, and then the Marines would go in. The assault itself would combine traditional amphibious landing craft with the V-22 Osprey tiltrotor aircraft, one of the most unique and capable military platforms on Earth. The Osprey takes off and lands like a helicopter, but flies like a fixed-wing aircraft, giving it both the flexibility to operate from ship decks and the speed to cover distance before Iranian defenders can reposition. Marine assault elements delivered by Osprey would hit inland targets simultaneously with beach landing forces, creating multiple, simultaneous points of contact designed to fragment Iranian defensive coherence and prevent them from concentrating their firepower on any single threat axis. It is a doctrine of controlled chaos, violent, precisely orchestrated, and designed to overwhelm not just the physical defenses of Kharg Island, but the cognitive and command capacity of its defenders. But here is the element that almost nobody is talking about, and it may be the most consequential factor of all. Special Operations Forces, Navy SEALs, Marauders, and reportedly elements of the classified intelligence support activity would have been operating in the Kharg Island area for weeks before any conventional force ever hit the beach. These advanced elements conduct hydrographic surveys of landing zones, identify gaps in Iranian defensive networks, in place sensors and targeting equipment, and in some scenarios conduct direct action against specific high-value targets that would otherwise complicate the main assault. By the time the first Marine amphibious landing craft hits the water, the special operations picture of Kharg Island's defenses would be extraordinarily detailed. Every bunker, every missile battery, every command post, as many as human intelligence and technical collection can identify, would be on a targeting list somewhere. This is how modern American military power works. It is not brute force. It is surgical violence at an almost incomprehensible scale and precision. Now, let us be honest about something, because this channel has always believed in giving you the full picture rather than the comfortable version. A military operation against Kharg Island, even a successful one, does not happen in a vacuum. Iran's response options are extensive, dangerous, and some of them could trigger exactly the wider regional war that American strategists are desperately trying to avoid, even as they prepare for conflict. Iran's proxy network, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, various militia groups in Iraq and Syria, represents a vast, distributed retaliatory capacity that could activate simultaneously across multiple theaters. American bases in the region, which have already come under rocket and drone attack in recent years, could face an unprecedented coordinated assault. The Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of all globally traded oil passes, could be mined or physically threatened in ways would require a massive separate operation just to reopen. Israel, which Iran has publicly threatened for years, could find itself targeted by Hezbollah rockets in volumes that strain even the formidable Iron Dome and David's Sling defense systems. The second and third order effects of striking Kharg Island radiate outward like the shockwave from a depth charge, violent, unpredictable, and far-reaching. And yet, and this is the cold, hard calculus of strategic decision making at the highest levels of government, American planners apparently believe that all of those risks are preferable to the alternative being an Iran that continues to fund arm and direct regional proxies, that continues advancing its nuclear program toward weaponization, and that continues interpreting American restraint as American weakness. The conclusion, if the intelligence assessments leaking into the public domain are accurate, is that the cost of inaction has finally exceeded the cost of action in the minds of American decision makers. And that, more than any weapons system or tactical maneuver, is the most consequential development in this entire story. There is one more dimension to this that deserves your full attention before we close. China and Russia are watching everything that happens in the Persian Gulf right now with an intensity and urgency that is difficult to overstate. For Beijing, which imports substantial quantities of Iranian oil and has been deepening its strategic relationship with Tehran, a successful American military operation that eliminates Kharg Island as a functioning export facility would be an economic blow with direct consequences for China's energy security calculations. For Moscow, which has its own complex relationships with both Iran and the broader regional order, the demonstration that the United States is willing to conduct major offensive military operations in the Gulf would reverberate through every strategic conversation currently happening about Ukraine, about NATO's eastern flank, about the entire post-Cold War security architecture that Russia has been trying to dismantle. A strike on Kharg Island is not just a Middle East story, it is a global story. It is a story about the shape of the international order in the decades to come, about whether American military power remains the ultimate guarantor of outcomes in critical regions, or whether a new multipolar world has arrived in which no single power can project decisive force. The answer to that question may be written on the beaches of a small island in the Persian Gulf in the weeks and months ahead. The Marines are positioned. The targeting packages are being refined. The electronic warfare assets are being rehearsed and calibrated. The Special Operations Forces are already in the water, metaphorically if not literally. History has a way of arriving not gradually, not with warning, not with the comfortable lead time that allows ordinary people to mentally prepare, but suddenly, shockingly, overnight. The world went to sleep one night in a particular era and woke up the next morning in a different one entirely. That could happen again. And you are watching the conditions for it assemble in real time. This is the story that matters more than almost anything else happening in the world right now. The strike on Kharg Island, if it comes, will reshape energy markets, reshape regional alliances, reshape the calculus of every military power on Earth. It will test American military technology, American operational doctrine, and American political will simultaneously. It will reveal whether 3,000 Marines and the most advanced military machinery ever assembled can accomplish in hours what decades of sanctions and diplomacy have failed to achieve. And it will set the terms of the global order for a generation. Stay alert, stay informed. Bookmark this channel because we are going to be covering every development in this story as it unfolds, every intelligence update, every military movement, every diplomatic development, every moment that brings the world closer to or further from the edge. Subscribe right now if you have not already. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a critical update, and share this video with every person in your life who deserves to know what is really happening in the world. Because the truth, as always, is more important than the comfortable version. And the truth right now is that thousands of Marines are poised, the world is watching, and the next move could change everything. Do not look away.